Hello and welcome to my video report. The following 10 minutes will contain my final thoughts and reflections on my placement year within the Audit Department at KPMG in London. The most enjoyable part of my placement year had to be going out to the clients and the organisations for which we served. This is mainly because of the access I gained to their sensitive information, their internal business procedures, and also their senior members of staff. I felt this really has enhanced my understanding of businesses, and especially the finance function of these different organisations, which was an area I didn't have much prior knowledge before going into this placement year. The least enjoyable part of my placement year had to be studying for the ACA qualification alongside my work. This is mainly because the modules are very focused on the accounting world and finance functions of businesses, which is an area I never really had much prior interest in. I didn't particularly enjoy those types of modules at university, and when I was having to study for them, it was always in my free time. It was never whilst you're at work. So all of my evenings, all of my weekends, they were given up to studying, which on top of, long days at work doing a job that I found not particularly enjoyable, that made it very stressful. And there was also a very high level of expectation on you as an individual at KPMG to pass these exams as well. And although the pass mark, may seem low to an outsider, it's only around, 55%. That's actually very difficult to attain because the topic areas are really complicated. And from someone like me, who, although I've studied business, I hadn't studied accounting, I found that quite difficult to deal with. I would say my biggest change of opinion through my placement year from my initial report I did after 3 months to this report now at the end would probably be related to the difficulty of work that you do within the audit department. During my first sort of 12 weeks at the company, the work I was doing was very mundane, very boring, not very challenging at all, and I really felt sort of underutilised. But as time went on and we got into what's known as the busy season in audit between January and March, well, mine extended to sort of May and June, the level of difficulty of the work really intensified, and I found myself being challenged in terms of the hours I worked, but also the difficulty of what I was doing. I was being given tasks that aren't stereotypical for a first year to do. So I think that really changed my opinion of how difficult the job is. I thought it was going to be a very boring, unchallenging year, but it actually turned out to be, way more challenging than I expected and very difficult. My experience at KPMG has taught me a very valuable life lesson that I feel lucky to have learnt so early on in my career. And that is that it's imperative that before you take a job offer, you know exactly what it is the job's going to entail, what the day-to-day work's going to be like. I knew so much about the organisation and the culture and sort of the structure, but I didn't know what audit was on a day-to-day level, and I think had I known that what I was going to be doing would not be something that I was going to, really relish and enjoy and want to do again in the future, then perhaps I would have continued searching for a different placement. I took the job for a number of reasons, but, knowledge of the job role was something that I wasn't particularly confident on. So yeah, certainly in the future, whenever I'm going for graduate roles or, beyond that, future career paths, I'm going to make sure that I really research the job that I'm going to be doing and ensure that it's something I'm going to enjoy. Whilst working on audit clients, I found myself consistently having to approach and talk to members of the organisations for which we were serving that didn't necessarily, want to speak to me. Often they were quite rude or dismissive, and they saw us mainly as a nuisance to them. And this was quite, it's quite hard not to take personally, but you have to as a part of the job role. We're required as, as people serving our clients to always put on a polite and happy aura. even if that conflicts with what you're really feeling and what emotions you've actually internalised. And this form of emotional labour was described by Hochschild in 1983 as putting on a public display of facial and bodily expressions that don't coincide with what you're actually feeling. And a lot of researchers have shown this to be quite a damaging thing for those who have to work under emotional labour and put on these fake expressions. I think it was Grandey in 2005 that said suppressing these feelings can deplete your personal resources and increase the level of job strain that you're experiencing. My experience attests to those claims. I did find it quite stressful, and that as an added stressor on top of a job that I wasn't enjoying sort of culminate into an experience that was quite unpleasant. By the end of my placement year, I don't think that my impression of client interactions had changed. When dealing with junior members of staff at organisations, I found them to be genuinely quite polite, very helpful, very nice people, very easy to sort of interact with and get to know. My problem mainly came with the more senior staff members of an organisation. As auditors, to them, like I said, we can be a bit of a nuisance. We're constantly asking them for information, for them to get their staff to give us documents. And although they get to choose, like as an organisation, they get to choose who their auditors are, they don't get to choose whether or not they have an audit. So again, we have, they have to give us information, we have to be there. And you could tell that that was their attitude. They were at times rude, dismissive. And I felt that my resilience as a character really improved over the year from having to deal with these difficult people and, maintain, politeness, get the job done, despite the fact, they didn't really want to talk to us. My direct supervisors, or in-charges as they're known at KPMG, were really, really positive people, and I found them generally a pleasure to get on with and to work with. At times it was difficult to adjust to all of their different styles because obviously you're changing engagements every 3 weeks and therefore changing your supervisor, mainly every 3 weeks. And to go from someone who's very strict and task-driven to someone who's incredibly laid-back and chatty, it was always, a bit of a guessing game for the first few days as to figuring out your supervisor's style. So, although I found that quite difficult at the time, sort of looking back, I find it to be, quite a valuable experience for me, seeing all these different management styles, getting a crash course in how each of them work. In terms of actual feedback from supervisors, at KPMG it doesn't really seem to be the thing to verbally compliment. I never saw any of my supervisors give any member of staff, verbal compliments, but they tend to do it in writing at the end of an engagement in your feedback form, and my feedback forms were really positive. I always try to show myself as being a proactive member with good initiative, and that seemed to come across in the feedback that I got. Finally, with my colleagues at KPMG, it's quite difficult to give an in-depth report as to how I got on with them, mainly because as engagement teams are chopped and changed, I never once got to work with someone for more than 3 weeks at a time. Also, my fellow graduate joiners who joined when I did, I never got to work with any of them once, so I only saw them once a month maybe, so I never really developed close friendships that you might think you'd get from working somewhere for a year. But those I did work with, all very, very nice people. It's the people at KPMG that really make it such a good organisation, because everybody's nice, everybody's helpful, everybody's bright, everybody is proactive, and that it's a good environment to work in, and I definitely enjoyed it. And I would have liked to have worked with some of my fellow graduate joiners more, because I have stayed in touch with them since I left, and look forward to seeing them again in the future. Overall, my placement year at KPMG has been a very up and down experience. You know, I have a lot of fond memories of some of the good times I had, but I also remember some of the times when I struggled and found the job to be very difficult. And I think a lot of those negative experiences aren't really attributable to the company itself, because the company is a superb organisation, you know, and I have a great deal of respect for it, even more so now from having worked there for a year. I think mainly what I didn't enjoy was the job role itself. You know, I never wanted to be in accounting or auditing. I originally applied for management consulting. They didn't offer placements, so I ended up in auditing. Perhaps not the greatest thing I've ever done as a person is sort of taking that job, because I knew I wanted to be a consultant. However, I've learned such a huge deal about dealing with clients, working in project teams, and it's really been a year-long interview for management consulting, because having finished, I managed to secure myself an interview for the management consulting scheme and did actually get a job offer. Which, you know, I was absolutely delighted with. Like, for me, that has made this whole experience worth it. You know, it's made the grind of working in a job that you don't enjoy worth it, because in the end, the result I've got is a lot of experience, a great brand of company to have on my CV. I've made some good friends, and also I've secured myself a job offer for when I finish, which is absolutely superb. So overall, I'm delighted with my placement year. You know, I know that it was difficult at times. I struggled a lot with certain aspects of the job. You know, mentally found it very challenging, but looking back, now that I've got this result of getting this job offer, it was definitely worth doing.